Good afternoon and welcome to the Administration, Finance, Recreation, and Parks, Public Safety, and Public Works Committee meeting for September 10th, 2019. The purpose of the committee meetings are for the city departments to pass along information to the city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of the city council, and the city administrator. The ordinance mandates the city administrator as the chair of the committee meetings. By ordinance, the committee makes no formal decision on committee matters. Rather, items are voted to move to a mayor and council meeting for consideration and vote, or staff receives guidance from the committee regarding a matter. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions during the committee meetings. Public comments or questions are received at the regular city council meetings held at 7 p.m. in the city council chambers on the second and fourth Monday of each month. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Public Works and Public Safety Committee for August 13th, 2019.
Motion to approve.
Agenda first. Motion approved by Councilmember Judy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tizer. Any questions or comments? All in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Moving on to, we're bypassing public safety, fire and police. Moving on to Public Works, item number 2, consideration for the mayor and or city administrator to award a contract to CDM Smith Standby Engineering Firm for design engineering services for the Willow Springs Lane Water Line Replacement Project in the amount of $32,364.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This project is to provide design engineering services. We're going to be using one of our standby engineering firms. We're going to be replacing an existing 2-inch galvanized line with a 6-inch line on Willow Springs Lane from Willow Springs Drive to the end of the cul-de-sac with a new 8-inch ductile. And the water line replacement will improve water quality, pressure, and fire flows in the area, and we have funds available in the water utility budget.
Floor is open.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion approved by Councilman Judy, second by Councilman Palermo. Any further questions or comments? All in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Item number 3, consideration for the mayor and or city administrator to sign a contract with Chatfield Contracting Inc. Standby Contractor for a stormwater drainage pipeline project at 1600 Martin Road in the amount of $138,261.
This project is to line an existing 72-inch wide drainage pipe under Martin Road and to provide outfall protection and headwall jacking and tiebacks that are going to be required to shore up the headwalls on that pipe. We're going to be using Chatfield Contracting Company, and they are one of our standby contractors, and the funds are available in our stormwater utility budget.
Thank you. Floor is open for questions.
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Judy. Second by Councilmember Palermo. Any further questions or discussions? All in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Need to take a short 30-second recess while we're reset.
Okay, when we changed the judges,
Yep.
you know, we had a full-time judge now.
He's still full-time.
Is he?
He just gets paid per session.
Oh, okay, that's right.
He's elected full-time
Okay,
for whatever needs we have.
okay,
But we just pay him instead of giving him
right,
money to sit around.
yeah, okay. That was my question. Right.
Okay.
That always blows up every time it comes up.
Okay, moving on to the Administration, Finance, and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting agenda. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Administration, Finance, and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting for August 13th, 2019. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Judy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by the mayor. Any further questions or comments? All in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Moving on to administration, item number 2, special events committee update. Ms. Ward, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Some time back, the mayor and council had worked with our special events division to coordinate and organize a special events committee made up of people within the community from different walks and different areas of the community to talk about our special events, what works, what doesn't work, where certain things could work, where they might not could work. And it's been going on now for 5 meetings, 6?
5 meetings.
5 meetings. And wanted to come and bring you an update of where we're at. So I'm going to let our special events manager, Chris Ward, take us through that.
Thank you. So as Michael had said, the mayor and council tasked us with putting together a special events committee. We got together about 5 months ago now. So the formation of the committee was made up of 16 members. It consisted of the City of Roswell employees, residents, business owners, and nonprofits. The selection process was quite a long one, but very, very encouraging. We had over 60 applications. We put it through a committee review board, which was made up of the Deputy City Administrator, the Director of Recreation and Parks and Cultural Affairs. It was one member of Roswell, Inc., myself, and Alice Wakefield. We, above picking City of Roswell employees, we also were tasked with picking 3 restaurants, which represented different geographical areas in Roswell, 2 to 3 local businesses, which would include retail, art galleries, or services, a nonprofit, and 3 citizens. We had our first meeting in March, and what I did kind of was just open it up and let everybody really speak to what they felt like talking about. It was a very open and honest meeting. Part of my thinking was to just let everybody really say what they felt about the City of Roswell, about events, good, bad, and indifferent, and it was a very good and really informative meeting for all of us. The second meeting we started out, pardon me? Eye-opening. The second meeting we started with kind of a task that we wanted to keep it positive. We had talked about some of the things that were negative, some of the things maybe that they wanted to see as improvements, and then we were going to move forward. So we've had 5 meetings since then. The first thing we did was work on a vision and a mission, and as you can see, I won't read them out loud to you, but those were the vision and the mission that the committee came up with. From that point, we decided we needed to talk about events in general. We wanted to know if we were going to bring events to the City of Roswell, what kind of events did we want to bring, and what was the end game, or what did we want to accomplish by bringing different events. So that we came up with 5 main topics, and that was an economic impact. We wanted to have overnight stays, or heads in beds, as they say. We wanted to bring a sense of community. We wanted it to be a destination so that when you would say, hey, that Roswell's having, similar to Alive in Roswell, everybody knows that Alive in Roswell is in Roswell and it's the 3rd Thursday. We wanted to continue that type of thing. And we wanted it to be something different than there's in any other cities. There's a lot of tastes of, there's a lot of art festivals. We wanted to find events that aren't anywhere else around us. Then the next thing we did as a committee was what separates us from the rest of the cities around us in other states. We came up with 3 major things. We have a historic district, and within that we have historic homes, which are absolutely beautiful, and we have a river, and we have access to the river. From that point, moving forward, we decided that we would, one of the goals we wanted to accomplish was to at least bring 1 fall event and then a 1 spring multi-day event. We sort of decided as a committee, maybe it was smart for us to kind of look out and reach out to event production companies to see what was out there in other municipalities and other cities and other states. We kind of brainstormed it. At least we had like 4 different production companies. So I reached out to all 4 of these, kind of told them exactly what we wanted. I gave them the list, like I had said, of what we were looking for in an event and what separated us, and tasked them with, hey, do you guys have any ideas? Out of those 4 event companies, 1 actually came back with some ideas. The other ones were more like, you need to come to us and you give us the event and we'll produce it for you. We went with Atlanta Creative Events just to hear what they had to say. And they had a wonderful idea for a fall event. It's Dia de los Muertos, which is the Day of the Dead. I don't know if you know what that is about, but it's a multi-day Mexican holiday that involves family and friends. It's kind of to remember those who have passed away. It's not morbid in any way. It's kind of a spiritual journey. We have decided it's going to be a permitted event. The organizer really wanted it to bring it here. He was having it down in Atlanta at Grant Park, and he decided to move it to have it in Roswell because he just thought it would be a really great opportunity for us here. It will run from 2 to 8 p.m. on November 2nd in the back of City Hall grounds. There will be a tequila tasting tent for VIPs. Also, we'll have a chef that shows how to make food with tequila, a mixologist that shows different drinks. We will finish the evening around 7:40 with a lantern parade, hopefully going up part of Canton Street and back around. And then the cool thing is Marigold making seminars the week prior. We have 3 locations tentatively right now that are in different sections of the city. And the marigolds represent the fragility of life. So you can come and make your paper lanterns, and then you line the streets or line City Hall grounds with these marigolds. So that's a very exciting event. Everybody on the committee was really on board. It does speak to something different. It does speak to a destination. And hopefully economic impact. If it's there all day, people will go and eat in the restaurants and maybe come back and shop. The other event that is also really exciting is also a permitted event, and it's the Roswell Food and Beverage Festival. It is being sponsored by From the Earth Brewery, and they are giving back to Homestretch. It is on October 27th from 1 to 6 p.m., and that's down at the Connection Shopping Center. And the beautiful thing about these 2 fall events is one's up on this end, and the other is across across 400 down at Connection Shopping Center. It is a cooler take on a taste of. Guests will feast on a delicious journey. They're going to have tasting bites and beverages from restaurants, breweries, cafes. They also will have a butcher who will demonstrate, different how to cook different parts of an animal. And then we're also going to have mixologists for wine, cocktails, and beer demonstrations. And they're going to use all local vendors, bartenders, breweries, smokers, all that kind of stuff. Tickets are on sale now. There's $125 for a VIP and $75 for a general admission. So those were the 2 kind of fall events that we came up with. Really excited. The whole committee was really excited to move forward with it. We've had a lot of support from the community and from the restaurants and businesses around the area. Then we moved forward to our spring multi-day festival. We wanted to first define kind of what the outcome would be for a multi-day festival in the spring. And again, we looked back at our economic impact, our overnight stays, our sense of community, our destination, and something different. And what we came up with that was we would need a signature branded event. We would want something that would cause economic impact for the city, heads and beds again, and something that would also be appealing to the community. So it would also, be happy. The Roswell residents would be thrilled to be here as well. One of the ideas was a music festival. We were still kind of talking about different genres. It would be a multi-stage, multi-day event. We thought initially we would incorporate the homes. I don't know if any of you went to the Mimosa Festival, but that was down Bullock Road, and we used Mimosa and Bullock. We would incorporate those 2 homes, and then we were thinking of using Barrington and Smith as our anchors for the night before on a Friday evening. We would try to tie it into an established event. The thought was maybe start it on a Thursday evening with Alive in Roswell, and then move it into a Friday VIP element, and then a Saturday all-day music event. There were a couple stipulations. It's a large budget, probably upwards to $150,000, which is very tough unless we had some buy-in from some major sponsorships. The other element that we need to look at is there is a committee that is together that is doing a music festival on their own. They did it last year. It is a 1-day festival. They have just put in their permit just this past week. It's for next fall in September 2020. They are coming in to meet with me on Tuesday to go over what the cost would be for city services. So that's another aspect. You're competing against a permitted event. And this was a multi-day. Theirs is a 1-day, one and done. So again, the constraints were kind of budget. first year success, this is a type of event that would take several years to build. And if you're looking for immediate economic impact, this wouldn't be the event to go with for something like that. There also is competition from established music festivals. This weekend alone is Music Midtown. We also have the Shaky Knees and Shaky Beats. There's Savannah has a huge music festival. There's a number of them in North Carolina. So there's those to take into consideration. So the committee sort of took a pause when we kind of started to doing this. Jeff Leatherman helped out enormously. He has a gentleman who he worked with in California on all kinds of festivals, and we spoke with him on the phone, and he said for a city our size, it would be very difficult to start a music festival and get great success right out of the gate. It would take a couple years, and maybe even a city of our size might not be the right mix for us. So then we kind of looked at what else. We took a pause and said, what else are we going to look at? What other festivals? So we're kind of taking a minute. We just had a meeting last week. We're all going back and taking a minute to kind of look at what current trends are out there in festivals, what's kind of the next best festival, what kind of model and size of festivals are we looking at to fit into our city, and what's the measurable outcome? Are we looking for economic impact only, or are we looking for heads and beds only, or are we looking for all of those things? So as of right now, we're kind of great with our one-day fall festival, and right now we're at a pause and trying to figure out our next step for multi-day festivals. And that's where we are.
Excellent. So thank you for this presentation. I think, first off, anytime, of course, you have residents and business owners together that have some ideas for festivals, I think that's a great thing. So I'm glad that they had something they were passionate about, want to propose this, and I'd love to see it be a success. But when I first brought forward wanting to start this committee, I think an important thing is I really want to empower residents and business owners that want to have events. And so actually you brought up a great point and kind of a segue. You brought up that there's discussion of this committee wanting to do a music festival, but it sounds like there's already residents and businesses that want to put one on. What I'm looking for from this committee is I want to hear how can the city make it easier to have festivals? How can we make it cheaper, smoother? And so I think a number of the people you have on this committee are people that have either held festivals in Roswell or outside of Roswell, and really want to learn from them. What is some red tape that Roswell has? What are some extreme expenses, anything at all, things that I haven't thought of? I really want to hear from this committee. How do we make it easier for someone else, to some business owner, some resident, whoever, to want to have an event in our town? And I think this is a great start. I'm glad that the committee is having these type of discussions. I'm glad they're excited about having more festivals. But I really want to see this committee also have specific action items. If mayor and council does X, Y, Z, it will be easier for businesses or residents to have events to go to, or have events, themselves.
Okay. I think we've talked a little bit about that. Initially, there wasn't a whole lot of discussion about anything that we might have done less than other cities or more expensive than other cities. I didn't see that as a glaring thing. I think mainly they just wanted to see some more different quality events and ones that brought people to the city. So I didn't sense that, but that's not a question I asked directly. So
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, and that could be the outcome. If I feel if you have a diverse group in the committee that have a lot of different backgrounds, have done things in Roswell, outside of Roswell, and if you're officially asking, saying, what can we do better? Is there anything that any other cities do to make it easier? And their official response is no. You really are doing everything the cheapest, the smoothest, the best. That's great. But then if there's anything, maybe it's, 99% is the same, but there's just one little thing that'd be better if you did it X, Y, Z. That's what I'd really love to hear from them, and really make sure we're just making it easy for entrepreneurs and different people that want to make Roswell, vibrant and lively.
I think we can make that intentional in a meeting.
Absolutely.
And
That's
just
what I mean.
cover
Just
that
ask
a little more directly. The
questions.
first meeting, we kind of heard it a little bit in a roundabout way, because it was everybody sort of giving their opinions of their frustration, maybe different things. So to go back now and really ask specifically,
great.
I think we can do that.
I think it's fine to try and make it easier. I think what I would like to see come from the group is an analysis of what makes a good event, what makes a good festival, with an emphasis of how do you select it versus actually selecting a list of new ideas. And then take that set of criteria and overlay the things that we do today along with these ideas and see which ones meet those criteria, because you can make it easy, but it can still fail, right? And I think making it easy, but also setting it up for success is more important. So I'd kind of like to see that analytic of what makes a good festival, and almost a little matrix that says here's the criteria that make one good and make one successful, and the success factors piece, and across the top here's the ones we have today, and here's the group of ideas and how do they fit in each one of them, so that you could almost hand that to somebody who had an idea, right? And they can look at that and say, okay, does my idea meet this group of success factors? And I think you'd save people a lot of, you'd get them up on the learning curve faster. It wouldn't take as many years to get something successful. People wouldn't lose money. You'd be able to help them get to the point where you'd want them to be. So that would be my
I
input.
could see that kind of a matrix really coming out of the second half of this discussion, because we started going with this one idea of a festival and found out that maybe all that criteria may not work well here, so I could certainly see us moving in that direction.
Be a good
easily.
time to do it.
My concern is if you sit a group of people around in a room to come up with ideas, right? Everybody's got ideas, but who knows if it makes sense or not, right? I mean, what are the what makes it successful? And maybe you look at other places and say, why are these successful and these aren't?
Well, we do have a lot of those discussions. It's just been the last meeting or two when we've sort of had some ideas from the committee on what kind of events would work, the economic versus the community. So we've had those, but I think we can get more
Deeper in.
specific to what you're talking about as we've moved forward in the relationship so far. So yeah, that'd be good.
Sure, and you could even see each one of the factors that you've got in there maybe gets a 1 to 10 score, and so
Sure.
here's an evaluation of this particular festival, and on the criteria of community engagement, that festival you've graded a 6. You add up all the points and you can start to figure out which ones are successful and which ones are not successful, and more importantly, you can now go to where you didn't think it was successful and do something to improve that particular criteria.
Well, I think we also need to look at what the goals are. So if a goal is to create a community event that's warm and fuzzy, a family-oriented event, all of the things that we are trying to do in Roswell to make it such a great community, where do you hold those? So to me, common sense would tell me down at the river, because I can't imagine that the river, anything you do at the river is going to be an economic driver for Canton Street or for East Roswell, because they're down at the river. So I think that, what's our goal is in each event, so we can have different events.
That's what I was.
Something that's an economic driver for our businesses, something that's a warm and fuzzy family event. I think we can kind of capitalize on all of those, but like I said, if our goal is economic driver, common sense would tell me you wouldn't put it at the river.
Right, and I think you're right. I think each event warrants different things depending
Right.
on what you're looking
Yeah, because
for.
we have different goals.
Different goals. So
Yeah.
each event takes on its own little set of criteria, almost.
Right, and there are family events, there are obviously drinking events,
Right.
or should I say, adult events.
Adult events. I agree with you 100%. Yes, sir.
Also will be good to have like an inventory of different places in Roswell that we can hold events. We need to identify all over Roswell where we can hold events, and then how many, people we can get into these different places in Roswell, and then from there you can start, coming out with events that fit the number of people that will be able to hold all these different places in Roswell. So kind of like an inventory of where we can hold events. Then what kind of events we can hold in each of them, and in terms of size, in terms of theme, and then from there we can start analyzing all the events where they make sense. Depends on the level of investment, depends of the time of the year, and all these other variables. So, but we need to have clear idea of where we can hold events and what kind of events we can hold in every single place.
Been an interesting discussion when we've talked about some events or even kicking around ideas, is where is that one big event venue space? We really don't have that one big one here. So one of the things the committee had talked about, I forget which one brought it up, is what if we do a multi-day event, but have several smaller venues that all tie together and get people to move around within the city and then maybe even stay overnight because they want to hit some other venue the next day. That way we can still do what we would say is a big event, but we don't have to have a big venue for it. And finding that inventory would be important. So yeah, we'll continue to do that. That's a good point. Because that's hard. That's a challenge.
is hard.
If you do come up with a really great event that's a large event, where in the heck do you hold it? So that's good.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Not for me.
Thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Moving on to
Thank you.
item number 3, consideration of proposed revisions to certain sections of the City of Roswell Human Resources Policies and Procedures Manual.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. I think I'm going to get out of the way because 2 people are going to come up and drive this one. So this is kind of an annual look over of our human resources policies, and there's some typos along the way, some clarifications along the way, and some additions on the way. And I'm going to let Michelle and Jim kind of talk those over with you guys.
All right, good evening. As Michael mentioned, this is proposed revisions for the HR Policies and Procedures Manual. Typically, we come about once a year to you with mostly minor type of revisions, cleanup kind of things, more often if needed for legal or regulatory compliance. And this time is no different. As Michael mentioned, a lot of these are, terminology or language cleanup type items. But there are a few more substantive new items that we want to go over. And Michelle Hunter, our Employee Relations Manager, will give us an overview of this. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. So about 46% of these changes are actually, as Jim had alluded to, typographical errors, changing of wording, things to match other policies, grammatical changes, things like that. And then about 50%, as you look at the list of each of them, I love color coding things, so they're color coded for you. 50% of them are procedural changes, but there are 3 new policies that we'd like to dive into first. The first one is the emergency pay. And this would permit our city administrator to authorize emergency pay in situations where employees are needed after hours or to stay after hours, or come in when they're actually scheduled off to handle emergencies. And that would be something that the department director and the city administrator would deem to be an emergency. So we're talking about situations, for example, with environmental public works, that it's January and a pipe burst at 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon when most of our folks aren't working. And so instead of calling in a contractor, we would be able to call in our own staff, incentivize them for coming in with emergency pay, but then be able to get that work done and not have to pay a contractor considerably more amounts of money to get that done. So that's our emergency pay. The social media policy is actually taking the policy that the Community Relations Division has put together and then the previous policy that was already in the Human Resources Policies and Procedures, putting those 2 together so that we have a more comprehensive policy that addresses both on-duty and off-duty, how folks handle social media there, and just gives some really clear guidelines with that one. And then the other newer one is the city event paid time off policy, which incentivizes our employees when they're actually scheduled off to come in and work city events. So they would be able to get special PTO when they come in, obviously be paid for the time that they're here, but get special PTO for coming in when they're not actually scheduled to work an event. Just incentivizing them to do that, and then of course keeping us from having to pay contractors to cover some of those events for us. And then the other notable changes with that is we've got a lot of locations on our current HR policies and procedures that designate only the city administrator to be able to approve things. And we're talking about things like outside secondary employment. Poor Mr. Palmer signs a lot of those. There's also things like flexible work arrangements and approval of bulletin boards that we were proposing to actually make some changes to that so that he could designate somebody within the different departments or an individual to go through and say yes, that instead of him signing off on all of those, somebody would be able to go through and do that. There are some major things that we are not recommending that we change in the policy in regards to the city administrator designating things. For example, we think that it still needs to come through him for emergency appointments. If we're going to do any deviations outside of policy, HR policy for approving salary adjustments, or hearing grievances that have been appealed to the director of HR and going above and beyond that. So it's still a lot that we're recommending that stays, but a few of those to go through, and just so he doesn't have quite so many papers to sign on those more minor type things with that one. The other change that we're recommending is a change to the introductory policy and the appraisals that go with that. Currently, we have, our policy requires an employee in the introductory period to have evaluations at 3, 6, 9, and 12 months. So what we're recommending is that we keep the 3, we keep the 12, and we make the 9 and the 6 to be optional. Obviously, we'll encourage supervisors to do that, but it won't be required to do anymore. And then the last change with that would be the vehicle policy, minor change in going with what the division is actually called. Instead of the city garage, it's actually Fleet Services Division, and then changing the replacement criteria, which actually lines up with the enterprise fleet leasing program that Environmental Public Works has in place currently. So any questions on any of those or any of the policies that we're recommending changes to?
So certainly good with all of the typos and the designees and all those sorts of things. I can support moving it forward. I just want to spend a little bit more time with the 2.19.4, the employee personal social media use section. So I'll take a look at that before we do, Mayor and Council. There's a couple things there that I'm not quite sure I have a good feel for.
Okay.
Floor is open.
Motion to move forward.
Motion to move forward by Councilmember Judy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by the mayor. Any further discussion? Questions? All in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Jim. Moving on to Recreation and Parks. Item number 4, consideration of a resolution for approval to submit a grant application to the Department of Natural Resources for the 2020 Recreational Trails Grant in the amount of $188,503. Mr. Leatherman.
Bless you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Palmer. This grant is a grant application for dock replacement down at Azalea Park. The dock replacement is consistent with our River Parks master plan in that it needs to be replaced and has been identified as a future capital project. In this case, we have been working on a partnership with the Atlanta Rowing Association, and they've actually committed to the city that they, if we're successful in getting the grant, that they will provide that match in partnership with the city. This is a dock that they leverage and utilize quite significantly. We also use it with some of our programming in the summertime, as well as the public has access to it, but it would be a great partnership if we are successful in being able to get that dock replaced and allowing the community and the rowing club to have access to the river.
Floor is open for questions.
No, the rowing club, I guess he was one of the officers at the rowing club, came to our conversations with council and was talking about how excited he was about the growing partnership with Rec and Parks in the city. So I'd support this, move this forward, motion to move forward.
Second.
Motion to move forward by Councilmember Judy, second by Councilmember Palermo. Any further questions or comments? All in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Moving on to item number 5, consideration of approval for a memorandum of understanding with the Rotary Club of Roswell, Georgia, Inc. Mr. Leatherman.
This is set up as a dual screen. Sorry, let me see if I can get it. There we go. So this was a project that we started working on a few months ago, and really it was a way to memorialize our longstanding relationship and agreement with the Rotary Club of Roswell. And I put the timeline on just so that the council could see that we've been to commission. It's been reviewed by the city attorney, who took those reviews back to the Recreation Commission, and it's before you tonight with a recommended approval from the Recreation Commission. And this really outlines what has been a longstanding historical agreement with the Rotary Club of Roswell and the mutual benefits that we get from various activities that they provide in the community, namely our 9/11 Remembrance Day, also a memorial celebration, and some past investments in our dream field up at the Groveway Community Park. And past history, we've exchanged their use of the Bill Johnson Community Center for their weekly meetings and a couple of community events that they host at that facility. And it's generally been a value-to-value change if you were to look at our rental payments that they would have to pay should they be using the facility. They contribute an equal amount in the community for the various events that they produce for the benefit of our community and supporting the livability within our community. We wanted to be able to memorialize that agreement so that all parties were clear on what the responsibilities were, what the roles were of each party, and that's the MOU that you have before you that describes not only the city's obligations but also Rotary's obligations, and that MOU would expire in 2023. It would be reevaluated at that time, and we would look at the ongoing investments that Rotary makes, potentially any changes that they would want to make, and then reevaluate that agreement and bring any changes forward as appropriate. With that, I can answer any questions.
Floor is open.
So how do you compare this MOU to previous one?
There has not been a previous MOU. It's been an agreement between both parties that has been done by staff, and so this was an effort to actually memorialize that agreement so that it was documented someplace.
Okay. And what is the point for 2023? What is the logic behind the length of the MOU?
Yeah, thank you. That would be when the investment of the Dream Field falls off. So we're giving credit for that investment up until 2023, which is a $10,000 investment a year. So essentially there was a large sum of money that was given for that facility, and so we would essentially amortize it over that time period, and then to 2023 it falls off.
Great, thank you.
So Jeff, I know you guys have spent a lot of time inventorying and working through all this, and we've had a number of conversations with the mayor, et cetera, to get to the point we're at now. And so if nobody has any more comments, I'd move to approve and move it forward.
So I actually have some questions. So I guess so I read over the MOU and I just want to understand it in layman terms. So basically, they use our facility, which the rent would be about $42,000 per year. And then so basically they hold some events which provide some value.
Correct.
And so therefore your staff has kind of calculated what staff sees as the value of these events, and therefore this MOU is to waive their rent in exchange for these events. Am I understanding that correctly?
So what we've done is we've looked at what the cost associated with the city, what the city cost would be if we were to produce those events based on the hours that Rotary commits to producing those events, and then valued it accordingly. So that's the cost benefit that we ran, and then yes, we would then agree that the city is getting that equal value of what the rent would be, and essentially balances each other out.
Because I think these events absolutely do provide a tremendous value, and I definitely love to give recognition for that. My concern is we have so many incredible organizations in Roswell that do a lot of incredible things, provide great value as well. Does this then kind of open the door for many different organizations to want to look for MOUs like this in exchange for rental of our facilities, and just I'm just kind of understanding, are there any other organizations that have anything like this?
There are not any other organizations that have an MOU exactly like this. This could create a model that we use in other relationships. We have a number of booster clubs that we've got relationships with and MOUs with for a lot of our athletic facilities. Our Ramblers is another example of those booster clubs that we use with our senior activities. And we have similar agreements with them, but not directly like the model that we're using with Rotary. It is a model that could be used in others, and that is a piece that the Recreation Commission would consider as we look at those partnerships and the use of our facilities and where those things are appropriate, then they could be considered in the future.
Councilmember Tizer, was that a motion?
It was, sir.
Second.
Motion approved by Councilmember Tizer, second by Councilmember Judy. Any further discussion or questions? If not, all in favor, please raise your hands.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay,
I just want to review it a little more before it comes to council and just understand for some of those other organizations.
so we got,
Just to move to council.
yes,
Is it just to move to council?
correct.
Okay, thanks.
So with 4 with 1 abstention. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff.
You bet.
Moving on to transportation. Item number 6, consideration of a resolution to apply for the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank grant in the amount of $5 million for the Big Creek Parkway project. Mr. Del Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Two items tonight for transportation are both grant opportunities. The first one is for our local Big Creek Parkway project. Both grant opportunities are through the State Road and Tollway Authority. This first request is for our project. We will be applying. As you see on the screen, some brief facts about the grant program. We call it GTIB, the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank. It is a grant that we have not seek to apply for yet. Purpose is to enhance mobility and drive economic development by accelerating transportation project delivery. It is not a yearly grant. It is funded subject to the governor's funding. So this year he decided to put $25 million available for the region, primarily community improvement districts and cities to submit projects for funding. Applications for this program are due by October 15th, which is why we are out of cycle here on the Admin Finance Committee discussing this with you. Awards will be announced in February 2020. As I said, $25 million is available for the entire region. There is also a $250 application fee for the city. As you may be aware, $25 million for transportation projects makes this grant very competitive. The selection committee is the higher-ups for transportation for our region, led by the governor and with the GDOT commissioner and the CERTA commissioner on the selection committee. Criteria for determining recipients for the projects, demonstrating a high degree of local commitment, which we will have for the Big Creek Parkway. As you'll notice, we check a lot of these boxes. Addressing critical local and state transportation needs, including economic development and mobility, innovative transportation solutions, close to or under construction, and a high degree of feasibility. Staff is recommending, I'll pause for a second. This information is different from what you have in your packets. This has been a little bit of a moving target for us. We've been working closely with our finance director, Ryan Luckett, and working with State Road and Tollway Authority officials, along with Atkins, our program manager. The information you see here now and what you'll see in the next item is slightly different than what you see in your packets. Staff is recommending applying for a $6 million GTIB grant for the Big Creek Parkway. Based on rules for the GTIB program, there is not a dollar amount cap that you can apply for. They do warn you that they will not be giving any individual projects more than a 25% contribution from the total. So the maximum amount for this round that any one project could get is 25% of $25 million. That's why we're applying for 6. Based on previous awards, typical projects are given anywhere from $500,000 to $2 or $3 million. So we're hoping anywhere between 1 and 6. There is also a loan component to this program. This has been a lot of conversation between transportation and finance. Ultimately, our recommendation for you at this time is to not pursue a loan. CERTA's guidance for us pretty consistently over the past couple of years has always been if you ask for a loan in combination with the grant, you are more likely to get the grant. Our recommendation for you here tonight is to not pursue the loan for this application simply because we would not be able to use T-SPLOST dollars to pay back the loan. That would have to come from general fund money because we did not on our T-SPLOST list very clearly state that the T-SPLOST funds would be using to pay off other obligation. It would be used to the project. And that's a technicality that if you have any other further questions on, I'm going to pull our finance director up here. There is a small loophole if this project is awarded GTIB funding, and an additional environmental hoop is added to our scope. Talking with staff, that is pretty minor and a very negligible construction cost increase. Any grant funding awarded by the project would simply decrease the amount of city T-SPLOST dollars we would need to build the scope. I'm happy to unveil, this is the first time any of you have seen this, the revised graphic for Big Creek Parkway that was approved last night. As you see, yellow line is phase 1, blue line is phase 2. Here to answer any questions you may have.
Floor's open.
I think it's a great concept that you've put together here, and I'm certainly in favor of getting $6 million from the state to work on projects here in Roswell, especially in areas that certainly can use some economic development and to help make this project move faster. So I'm very much supportive.
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Judy,
Second.
second by Councilmember Palermo. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands.
Get them right.
Thank you. Item number 7, consideration of a letter of support for the North Fulton Community Improvement District to apply for a Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank grant in the amount of $2 million for the Old Ellis Extension Project. Mr. Del Ross.
This item is a grant request for the exact same source. The difference is this is a North Fulton CID-led initiative, not a city initiative. The CID is the lead on the Old Ellis Extension project. They have asked the city to provide a letter of support in their application. Again, I will warn you, the amount has changed from what is in your packets. North Fulton CID is seeking $6 million, not $2 million as in your packet. Once again, GTIB grants are very competitive. There's only $25 million for the region. GTIB grants do not require a local match. Any grant funding for this project would reduce the amount of local funding needed to construct this project for the CID or for Roswell at a future date. If approved, we would like to work directly with the mayor's office and provide that letter to the CID as requested.
My question is, does it happen very often where one city receives 2 grant awards?
So we've talked about that a lot internally. First, it's important to know that it would not be the city receiving 2 projects. The Old Ellis Extension is an application from the North Fulton CID. Big Creek Parkway is an application from the city of Roswell. Whether you see it as competing one against the other, and perhaps the idea of wanting to spread this $25 million out regionally and try and spread it amongst the region geographically, or whether you would see it as these 2 projects competing against all of the other projects with the idea of hoping to get one or the other funded. That depends on your point of view. Staff recommends ultimately submitting both and hoping that one or both will win.
Yeah, I can't imagine us getting both of them. That would be half the 25 million.
That'd be beautiful.
I
It'd be
agree.
great.
I agree that it's unlikely.
That was my same question.
I agree that it would be unlikely that we would get $6 million for both projects. I would hope that very often in previous years' funding requests and applications for this process, CERTA gives, not all the time, but less than what you're asking for. So I would say there is a scenario out there where maybe each project doesn't get $6 million, but maybe each project gets $2 million.
Great, well, thank you for doing this. Beating the bushes, coming up with money. We appreciate it.
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Judy,
Second.
second by Councilmember Palermo. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Thanks, Rob, for adjourned.
Toot sweet.